Watch your back flap.
My name's James Cameron, and formerly I was in the British Army. I did 17 years in the Royal Tank Regiment, and I now run an organisation called Mission Motorsport, the Forces Motorsport charity. By way of background, I think I've always been a petrol head. I love cars, automotive, tech. I'm kind of really interested in those things, but ultimately it's cars, and that sort of love of automotive has always been a feature of my life. And I learnt to drive at the first possible opportunity, passed my test as close as my 17th birthday as I possibly could, and have owned a series of cars that have cost me an awful lot of money, which if I could have it all again, I would probably spend on a car. I used to race and rally and do as much as I could within my budget, and the Army, however, didn't even consider motorsport to be a sport until 2009, which is way too late for me. And everything that I'd sort of achieved in the meantime, I'd done in my spare time and my spare capacity. And had a lot of friends, fortunately through press and PR stuff, which meant that I knew people in everything from automotive car companies to guys who ran race series who I would help do some instruction for. And used to blend the two, raise a bit of money for service charities. So where I was based at RF Honington in Suffolk, it obviously became a track day and test car venue. And where possible, you raise money for the causes which are close to your heart. And obviously for me, that had kind of been the service charities. But I sort of went a bit quiet on that side as I came out of 2009 into 2010. My military career was taking me back onto armour, and specifically to go and command an armoured squadron who provided the armoured component of the task force in Helmand in that part of Afghanistan, sort of commanded by the Brits. Well, I knew that the automotive industry had great opportunities for people who were leaving the services, but it really starts to, it was brought into sort of glorious technicolor for me actually when we were on our way back from Afghanistan, and was reunited with some of the guys who we'd been separated with on tour. And the last time you've seen them, they've gone into the back of a medical evacuation helicopter or similar. There's a separation which is quite difficult to deal with, because they're somebody who is part of your very close-knit group, your tribe as it were, and you don't just know them in a superficial sense. You've got a pretty good understanding of their potential and where they should be going, and you know what their horizon should look like. You probably know the names of their families and their loved ones and their kids, and whether they've got a dog or not, and all of that sort of stuff. And their life has been profoundly changed. You might also be saying goodbye to people because you don't think you're going to see them again. And to be reunited with them is a really powerful thing. And for us, at that time in Afghanistan, you would come back through a process called decompression. And it is literally a decompression, the opportunity of 24 hours to take some of the stress out of people who inevitably are quite tightly wound due to what they're doing for part of their job. But before you then plonk them into the middle of their family, we came through as a formed unit, which I was really grateful for, because it meant you got to go through decompression with those that you'd been away with. You know, you change into your sports kit and you spend 24 hours, you know, in Cyprus at some little camp in the back end of nowhere. But with a programme of activities to largely distract and entertain you while your kit's being washed so you look decent when you come off the plane at Bryce Norton or Lyneham or wherever you're flying into. My regiment did an extraordinary thing and reunited us with a lot of the blokes who who we'd lost during the part of that tour. And so for us, that was us seeing them for the first time again, meeting guys who were, amazing, were on prosthetics. But you also got that first time where you got to see just how much they were impacted. And there was one young lad called Will Madden who drove Billy, my TAC Troop corporal's vehicle. It was normally the wagon that was directly in front of me, who was blown up earlier on that year. And this young, bright lad who was just into everything, just a real force of nature. And it was almost like the light had gone out behind his eyes a little bit, that something had been snuffed out in him. And he was right at the beginning of his military career. He'd gone through training, come straight out, pre-deployment training, and then deployed out to Afghanistan. His vehicle had been hit by an IED, so a massive acceleration upwards by an explosion going off directly underneath his seat. Lots of blast attenuation stuff within. The Warthog had saved his life. There's no two ways about it. That job that we were doing of replacing a vehicle Viking where people were being killed with Warthog, where without that vehicle I think I'd have gone to 9 funerals. His would have been one of them. But his arm was resting on something that wasn't blast attenuated in the same way, and it had a blow to his right arm that meant he'd lost some of the feeling and ability to use it. And it was coming back. He was on a medical rehabilitation process, but he'd been told that your military career has ended. And for him, age 19, to have lost his tribe, to have been pulled off in such a sort of traumatic way, and then told that, coming to terms with the fact that he's disabled, very much different to the way in which he'd perceived and seen himself previously, and was in a state where he was back at home. He wasn't sort of with a unit. We were all deployed, and there's only so much daytime TV that you can tolerate in between, sort of 2 weekly trips up to Headley Court to be able to do his physical rehabilitation, and was clinically depressed. It was as straightforward as that. And you want to do something for them. You want to give them hope and things to look forward to. And some of the stuff I had up my sleeve, which would have been amazing, auctioned off, would have raised a few grand for charity. I had lads who would have loved to have done that, and to give them something to lift them to look forward to was an amazing opportunity. So talked to the likes of Paul Golding, Stephen Doherty, the folk who are running the racing opportunity, and said, instead of this being auctioned off, can we use some of our lads? And they just went, yes. And I started using this black book and started pulling in some favours. But one of the parts of the racing was endurance racing, and it is so much of a team effort in order to be able to get the metal or composite box across a line at the right time, at the right place, with the right things in it, better than all of the other guys. But that's exactly what they do for a living. It's just a different context. And so all of the lads leaning into different roles around it. And Will Madden, this young 19-year-old, so impressed the team that they asked for him back. He flew out to Barcelona, while he was in recovery. He was able to go and make up one of the team members on a team that was racing the Barcelona 24-hour race, and came back from that. His mum washed his kit for him, and he reported straight to Silverstone, where he's then getting trained up by Jota, a Le Mans winning team, to be the #1 right-hand man on a Works MX-5 that was racing the Silverstone 24-hour race, because, bless him, Graham Fudge at Mazda believed in us. And then we put Help for Heroes on the bonnet and the Army Benevolent Fund on the side, and Forces Children's Trust on the front as well. Scotty's Little Soldiers, a charity started by the widow of a guy in my regiment who was killed in 2009, that helps kids who are bereaved where their parents were in service. In order to give these charities a platform, and let's put some serving blokes in order to do the racing, And the team that were running it were a bunch of wounded guys that Jota were fantastic at mentoring and just helping train up. And it gave them a focus and a purpose and something to look forward to. And as we did track days and things like that towards actually getting to compete at Silverstone, the track day organisers and the likes of Gold Track told their clientele what we were doing. And I remember standing at the front of a pit lane at Silverstone, and a McLaren pulled up, and it was a very new thing, it hadn't been out very long, all of the rest of it. Pulled up, the door opened, and the guy sort of said, you know, have you got any soldiers or anything that I can put in here? And I said to him, I'm really sorry, they're all out in other cars at the moment, can you go around, do a couple of laps, come back in, and I'll have somebody for you. It was an extraordinary thing, and you were clearly sort of harnessing this goodwill. We were learning about recovery sport as well. For Will Madden, he competed as part of the team that did that Silverstone 24-hour race in September 2011. And at 4 in the morning, I'm having a conversation with Sam Hignett, the boss of Jota. And he's talking about how he gets any number of applications from guys who've got, you know, a degree in motorsport from the University of God knows where. But at 4 in the morning, and he was pointing to the blokes who were actually fixing a car from the garage next door to us. It was a competitor's car that was going to be retired. And they'd just gone, nah, we can fix that. And had propped this thing up on the side and were pulling the hot exhaust off the bottom of it to kind of make it work. And at 4:30 in the morning, Sam Hignett saying to me, you know, so if Will's leaving the military, how do I go about offering him a job? And at that point you think, oh, we need to do this properly. At the end of 2011, I'd raged at MOD. I wanted them to take responsibility. And basically got told, look, you're the one with the answers. You tell us. I was ordered to write a paper. And that made me break it down and look at how recovery sport was used elsewhere. I went and visited skiers, went and visited sailors, went and visited other entities that were doing similar stuff, and lent a lot onto the likes of Help for Heroes and the sports recovery program to understand how these things could be constructed. The recommendation that came out of this thing was that there was an organisation that was a charity, a service charity from the outset, so that when you put a pound in, you know exactly where it's spent. And that financial piece was really important to be able to get right. And it was also something I really tried to avoid. I mean, I thought forming another service charity was an absolutely shocking idea, and I still do to anyone who's thinking about it. The easy path to follow is a sponsorship path and things like that. But to do it in the right way, where the blokes are first and foremost, where duty of care is the most important thing which the organisation does, that's the difficult path to follow, but it was the one we chose for ourselves, I guess. And 3 of us came together. A guy called Rich Bernard, friend of mine, Civvy, who I met through a love of motorsport and silly cars. But his expertise was very much in the mechanism of starting a business and company's house registration and the charity commission work which needed to be done, which I had no clue or capacity to be able to do. And a guy who himself had been wounded on operations, who was essential from our perspective because he gave it that beneficiary perspective that's been really important since the outset. And the 3 of us together created this thing called Mission Motorsport, and it's underpinned by this mantra: race, retrain, recover. Because it's not about the sport, it's using sport as a tool. The charity was then launched at Thruxton on the 1st of March 2012. And that feels really weird thinking that that's 10 years ago. Because in a way it feels like a lifetime ago, and in another way it feels like yesterday. We launched Mission Automotive, the Armed Forces engagement scheme for the automotive industry, hand in hand with the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders in March 2019. And that's now spread these fantastic business behaviours, these examples of best practice, now are lily-padded across the automotive industry, and we've helped all sorts of people from Tesla to Toyota, you know, running wonderful programs that are bringing people into jobs in dealerships, through to lovely British brands, Lotus doing incredible things as they're swelling in numbers, Morgan as they're, you know, again redefining themselves, bringing out new vehicles, getting larger, shinier. helping companies like that to be able to access service talent that otherwise they would have struggled to access or perhaps might have overlooked. A lot of the work that we've done alongside automotive companies has got nothing to do with building cars. This is all about people and how you look after them. And so some of those processes we're now using and feeding back into other organisations, other charities, through the Confederation of Service Charities, through the Office for Veterans Affairs. We're working with MOD in order to be able to help sector initiatives to flourish in the same way that Mission Automotive has, because this benefits our beneficiary audience. And in that way, the charities work can span some really personal, individual work with individuals who have really suffered. But on the broadest span, it can have an impact on helping an entire sector of society to be recognised and have a better opportunity of having their qualities recognised and being recompensed for it through employment. Because if we allow these people who we've invested so much time and effort as a country into to be underemployed or unemployed or under a bridge or a worse, a suicide statistic, then we're failing as a society. For every bloke or girl who goes across that and makes an employer happy, it just makes us look good, and that makes my job really easy, because actually all I'm doing is just celebrating the success of amazing people, and we're just the mechanism that just joins up the two things together in order to allow them to be as brilliant as they are. And that's kind of the thing that's really humbling for us too, because we're, you're sort of standing on the shoulders of giants, aren't you? And that's really cool. Sport is incredible. It's restorative and healing, but it's at its most powerful if you can use it as a tool for a wider recovery piece, to be able to help put somebody on a pathway where they can get better and support themselves and their family for the rest of their natural lives.